Hello, happy Thursday. Finally doing this, Jonathan. We've got you. We finally got you locked in. How's
I'm
it going?
excited to be here.
You have
We're
not been
excited
on
to
this
have
show
you.
for years, I think. Is that
It's
true?
been a couple years.
Yeah, it's one of
the
those
hell are we
times where it's
doing,
like,
Jake?
no, we just had him on. It's got to be been recently, and then we go back to the logs, and go, oh no, it was like, yeah, a long time ago.
Well, it's
Millennial.
still
That happens
2020, isn't it?
to us. Somewhere close to that. Yeah, I think.
I'm losing track so much.
Yeah,
I just looked at the calendar. Is today the day that was this the day for the U.S. March 13th, 12th, 13th? It's one of those 2 days.
For what?
You know, when
what?
everything, the NBA got canceled, everyone finally settled into realizing we're all staying home for a while.
Yeah, that's right. So wow, it's 5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
It's the right week. Yeah, because I think the 18th was like the first day I had to not leave the house. I think that was, if I remember, I think it was the 18th. So, yeah.
Well, here we are. We've I think, did we start doing video for the show before that, or was that like, hey, I feel like we started screwing around with video shortly before COVID set in.
You know what? I don't even remember. It's
Neither
all
do
blur.
I, but
Yeah,
I was
we'll
going
look
to
it up.
credit COVID for the existence of us doing video, but I'm pretty sure that's not true.
No, I don't think it's true.
Well, Jonathan, you're a handful of weeks on from the Space Report Library Transition Project, but I'm sure it's like millennia of worth of time for you. So we need to talk about where it's at. I wanted to talk about the library generally because I feel like we've not talked about that in depth, and it's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, well, I am too. It's been my pride and joy for 50 years now, slowly growing. And so I've had this. I've been, I'm the space pack rat. I've been dumpster diving in space agencies and aerospace company libraries, discard trays for half a century, and as well as shelling out real money for stuff, and so I've accumulated, I think is unique for sure, collection of documents and books on the history of the technical history of space, and particularly post-launch reports, and what did this satellite actually do, and so I have about 200 bookcases covering about 1,200 square feet, or I did, but they're now all in boxes. And so, decided it's time for me to end my 35 years at the Center for Astrophysics as a working astronomer, and go back to England and bring the library with me, and find somewhere to put the library for the next 10 years at least, as I continue to write the book and develop the website and get the stuff that's in the library out in some form or digital form.
That's a big job. That is a non-trivial amount of work.
It's a whole job.
It is.
That's why he's quitting the other job and taking this on as a job.
Right, exactly. Well, no, I'm thinking that the process of, having decided in November that I was going to do this move, packing the library, selling my apartment, moving into a temporary apartment, looking for property in the UK, which is still underway, and preparing for formal retirement from my astronomy job. Coordinating all of that at once, as well as continuing on my day job for now, it's sort of been like a systems engineering problem comparable to
Jake, I skipped the whole segment where I asked you if you were drinking anything, by the way. I just was realizing that.
Right.
Did you bring anything to drink, Jonathan?
I brought several things to drink. I brought some Irish breakfast tea to keep me going, and strawberry yogurt juice shot.
Look at that.
Yogurt shot. Love it.
Keep the throat going.
I get the probiotics.
Yeah,
You got to pack them in there, What do you got, Jake? You got something cooking? Did you make some fancy looking thing?
No, I found the cutest thing ever. Look at this.
What is that?
It's a penguin.
What's he doing?
It's called Igloop.
Igloop.
I think it's from
What is it,
Spain.
though?
I think it's
What
from
is
Spain, and it's like a white wine. It might be carbonated. Hold on, let's find out.
It might be carbonated. All right, let's hear it. Put it up to the
Yeah,
mic.
a little bit.
A little bit. That felt like more for freshness than anything, but
Yeah, a gulp of refreshing Macabeo white with a bubbly touch. It says so. It's like a little bit carbonated. But I bought it because it had a penguin on it. That's literally it. I just like penguin.
Drinking out of a straw too. The straw really does it for me. I just have it's white wine season here again. We got the clock change. It's in 60 degrees. It's white wine season, Jake. Feeling good. I'm just pretty thrilled about this overall. So things are looking up.
Things are looking up.
I'm glad things are calm for you. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got too much going on. Okay, this is a question I had when you were on Miko around when this fundraiser started. We should plug the fundraiser at the beginning. Is what we should do. It's because you've had generations of goals that I would like to hear about. Now, I think I talked to you right before the initial one. You've had to up to like what's the next stretch goal? Where are we at currently with the fundraiser?
Right. So currently I've raised $107,000, which is incredible. And thank you, all of you who donated. It means so much to me that you feel like the work I've been doing is worth the support. But I think, I may have enough now to kind of pull it out, but it's not, it's tight. And so I am asking for more. For those who can afford, because if I can get another 50K or so, that opens up a whole new set of properties that I can't currently quite afford, and so currently the leading candidate is a windowless basement. It's got a lot of space. It's enough space for the library. And it's gonna need $200,000 worth of renovation to make it even usable as office space. There's a nice Georgian house in a sort of suburb that is also a possibility, but it's it would need that extra 50K that I don't have. And it has
windows though.
It's above ground. It has windows.
Get Jonathan above ground. This is the movement. Get Jonathan out of the basement.
Buy Jonathan a window.
I mean, windows are overrated. It's sort of like being in a spacecraft going to Mars or something where you have the shielding.
You'd have to do like simulated space views out on the walls if you don't have any real windows.
I mean, the plan would be to put a webcam up on the street and then stream it to a TV. Then so I can pretend that I have an outside. But yeah, it's not. It's not the most elegant solution. So and it's not even clear. I mean, so I have to apply for planning permission and all those kinds of joyful things. And so it's still a work in progress. Still no definite location, but I feel like I'm close, and a little bit of extra donations could put me over the top there. So that's the real story. I promise not to raise the goal again.
Oh no! Wait, hold on. I'm here to lobby personally for raising the goal $282 because then you will have your goal will be $1 per mile per second that light travels. You are only 282 away.
Okay, but I don't do miles. You see,
I know you don't. But this is about your target market, Jonathan.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, you're speaking to an American audience right here.
Right. Well, so the 180 kind of range was sort of like 100 for the Kármán line and 80 for the McDowell line.
I'm good. I'm set. You're good. You're good. I'm back in. Don't raise the goal ever again.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, you mentioned dumpster diving when we talked on Miko. You mentioned it here as well. The other question I have is, did you ever acquire through official or non-official means a document or book or something that then the institution was like, oh shit, he can't have that one? Did you ever get into one of those situations where like that had this piece of info that we're not supposed to let out? Did you ever get your hands on something juicy?
don't think they've. I mean, I have done. I don't think they've ever realized that I have what I have. But yeah, there's a few in the collection that maybe they would sort of think twice about if they knew I had it. Yeah.
Is that going to be like the section from the Hogwarts library where like with the restricted section or whatever, where you can't go unless you get special permission?
Yeah, I might have to do that. I might have to do a few things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is. I mean, that if it were if it were in government hands now, they would now ITAR it. That back in the 80s, they didn't bother. It was just like, no, that's fine, have that, right? And so I think things have gotten tighter.
Talking about the umbilicals for the space shuttle external tank, is that the kind of thing that that maybe was allowed to be out there in the 80s and is now ITAR'd?
Right, that kind of thing, yeah. And so I think there's probably a lot of stuff like that. But I also have I mean, one thing I have, and I also have a lot of Russian documents that were published during the Yeltsin era that have all kinds of great details that now in the Putin era they wouldn't put out anymore, and so that's a pretty interesting collection, I think, of stuff on Russian rockets and satellites. That some of it in English, some of it in Russian. That is pretty hard to find now.
And so interesting. We maybe shouldn't talk about it too long on the show. That feels like might want to keep that one tucked in the windowless basement.
Yeah. So I don't want the guys with the poison umbrellas coming after me. But and then of course there's all the declassified DoD stuff. But that's the easy stuff. It's the
at least they can't throw you out a window there, though, right? So.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Windowless basement is looking good.
There isn't.
Yeah, no, there's definite advantages to being in the bunker.
It's crazy you're buying the Churchill war rooms, but other than that,
right, exactly.
It's kind of pricey.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really real estate. It's really hard to find homes that are large, right?
Turns out.
Well, unless you have like 5 million, right? If I had 5 million, I'd be in gravy. It'd be no problem at all. But when I'm looking at more like 500,000, it's just not easy to find stuff that actually has things like a roof. At least the basement has a roof. That's better than some of the places I've been looking at. You got to take the small favors, right? And so it's been. I mean, I'm just becoming such an expert on all the things I don't want to be an expert on, like UK real estate and planning permission and all of these things that is invading the part of my brain that should be reserved for specific impulse and orbital dynamics and things like that. So hopefully it will be over soon. And then it's going to take me. I mean, if I go ahead with the beta, it's going to take me at least 6 months to get planning permission, get the contractors in, make it livable, and then a couple of months to actually physically ship the 1,100 boxes from the US to the UK. And so many adventures ahead of me in this project. When I'm done, though, the hope is that I'll have a much better place to welcome people to do research in the library. And so my hope is to be able to say, the McDowell Space Research Library is now open for business, by appointment. Come and look at all this old obscure stuff if you're researching a book, for example. And I have had it already in the past when I hear Dave Stumpf, who wrote the great book on the Minuteman missile, came here for like 3 or 4 days to do research and Xerox and scan to find relevant documents for his book. So there's been a few visitors like that have actually made use of the library, but I'd like to get it out there a bit more.
Yeah. So can you tell me a bit like how this collection started? Like, was this sort of an organic, like as a personal interest, you just would pick up these books, and then at what point did you realize like, hey, I actually have
I'm
enough
building a
here
library.
This is actually a library, not just like not just my personal bookshelf in my room.
Great question that no one's asked me. Yeah. I mean, it kind of was organic. I mean, the beginning was really, there were, there was this comic that I got as a kid that had, Doctor Who comic strips, but also articles about spaceflight. And I would clip them out and make a scrapbook.
This is the domino meme with the Jonathan likes comics, and it's like, all of a sudden owns a library, shipping it across the Atlantic.
and I found the other important thing was there was this book called James Littlewood's Aircraft that some people may be familiar with that had in the back a spaceflight section, and they had a list of this year's space launches, which I copied down, right? And then I realized that it was a crappy list. Sorry, James. And that it would be possible to make a better list. And so I was I think 12 at the time, and I started making the better list. And so 50 years later, I have the better list. And part of that process was, finding obscure documents to fill in launch times that I didn't have, or configurations that I didn't have. And so that was really the genesis of really collecting these more obscure documents. And another key moment was my visit to the US in 1985 as a graduate student, where I waltzed into NASA Goddard and sweet talked the people in the World Data Center for Rockets and Satellites to give me the big, massive line printer printout of all the sounding rocket launches in their database. And I'm so glad I did that, because a few years later, they transitioned systems and lost that data, or just straight up threw it out. And so that data would no longer exist if I hadn't taken away that printout. And now I've entered it, and that's sort of in the general catalog of space objects on my website. The launches that were only in that. So and so it's been a question. There was the time I visited the French Space Agency in Toulouse. Super nice people, very helpful. They did a nice job of showing me around the glitzy control center. And I went, yeah, this is awesome. Can I just have half an hour in your basement with a Xerox machine? And I went down and copied the microfilm of all this French sounding rocket launches. And so
they were like, yeah, sure. Like, that's a weird.
Yeah.
Did they have to ask anyone else to say, all right? Like,
yeah, whatever floats your boat, Jonathan. Right? So I've sort of done that over the years, and there have been some amazing places I've got to visit. I mean, it's a great excuse to go and visit strange places, right?
Yeah.
And so I got to visit the Indian sounding rocket launch site at Trivandrum. No, what's it? Trivandrum is the short form, in Kerala, and on the beach in the south of India. Fabulous place if you ever get a chance to go there. And that was the birthplace of the Indian space program in an abandoned Jesuit church that on the beach, and ISRO took it over, and that was their first headquarters, and they launched sounding rockets off the beach. There's the I want to give a shout out to my new British colleagues. The Science Museum in London is a fabulous place. If anyone's ever visited that, what you probably don't know is that the Science Museum has like many museums, right, have a lot of their stuff in off-site storage. They can't display everything that they have. The Science Museum has an aircraft hangar in an old Royal Navy aircraft hangar in the middle of Wiltshire, not far from Stonehenge. And it's this enormous abandoned Navy base in the middle, far from the sea. So don't ask. And it was a Navy airfield for some. Who knows?
We were getting into a lot back then, Jonathan. You know, things were a little busy. We just needed space. As you know, real estate's hard in England. You know,
and this hangar is just chock full of, as an enormous building, is chock full of these sort of trestle storage units, like stacked 5 or 6 high, long corridors of them. So I want you to imagine the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right, with the Holy Grail, being put in that. Everyone knows that scene, right? It's that. It's amazing. And you walk along the corridors there, and like this little trestle area has a collection of 1950s typewriters. And against the day when that will be an interesting historical exhibit, And I mean, they are, I think I'm a pack rat. Oh my, these folks just blow me out of the water. And they have all this, the everything from the Industrial Revolution, Industrial Revolution steam machines, down to 19th century to early Apple Macs. And then there's this one place which has the cartons of files of the early British space program. And so that was what I was there for. But and
I'm
so
trying to find a picture of this place. Are there pictures of this place? It sounds wild.
That's it. It's wild. I should have taken. I don't know if I was allowed to take pictures or not. I didn't take pictures. That was an error. But yeah, and so you get the opportunity to explore these fantastic, weird experiences.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I could get lost in a place like that. No problem.
Right.
You'd have to excavate me from that place, I think.
And then there are the other places like the Energia Museum in Moscow, where they have, Gagarin's capsule and Tereshkova's capsule and things like that.
Yikes!
So
have you gotten like stuff out of China, or what is the current? Because it's like I feel like you're trying to smuggle the same stuff out, but it's like modern era being stifled, right? So it's like just
right.
In a lot of ways.
They're more open than they used to be, and they do have some really nice. They publish some really nice books. Unfortunately, in Chinese on their early space program, so they're much more open now about the stuff they did in the 70s and the 80s. It's harder to get the stuff they're doing now, but there is stuff that you can find, and so not smuggling, but I have contacts and I get some stuff, not that much. Admittedly.
If you say I have contacts, it sounds like you're smuggling. It's really hard to separate those two vibes. To be honest,
no.
I have contacts.
People on the internet, who post things for everyone. It's just that I'm the only one who actually reads them, whereas I think and then at the other extreme, right, there's Japan, and Japan, there's like so much documentation, again, all in Japanese, but fortunately I have a Japanese friend who can help me translate. And so there I have stacks of material on their early program. They've done a really nice job of documenting what they did. And so, except for that one, there's this fascinating mission in 1990 that was one of the first to do really complicated orbital maneuvers, and they had a printout of the orbital ephemeris, but they decided it was too much trouble to let me copy it. So that's probably lost now, and I really regret that, because it would be nice to be able to reconstruct that mission and its maneuvers. So there's a few. There's the one that got away here and there, but overall, I think I've done a pretty good job in. I treated like a big Sudoku puzzle, the list of launches and all the metadata for them, and so I'm pretty pleased with. Having and really the motivation was 1,000 years from now, when most people are no longer living on Earth, and they want to look back and go, how did this all start? They're going to want to know the details, and I want to try and preserve those details. That's the audience I'm writing for.
Man,
that's an ambitious objective.
I like it that it's, there's like people on Mars that are like, I was digging the other day. I found this screw. Like, how did this screw get here? And it's like, well, let's check Jonathan's list because he probably knows exactly when that screw was ejected from the back hatch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah.
Future archaeologists.
That's great.
It's so good.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So that makes me. But the thing that makes me nervous is you're about to put all these books on a boat and.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
You can put all on the same boat. You're gonna dole it out one at a time. Like, what's the plan?
They're gonna fill 3 large shipping containers. It's gonna cost $50,000 just to ship them.
Oh God.
Oh my goodness.
Them and the bookcases themselves. And
what are the tariffs on book exports these days? How are we looking? How are things looking?
Yeah, okay. I haven't looked at that lately. That's a good question. So yeah, I think it's personal property, and so it's okay. But
should be all right. Yeah. Until you tell them it's ITAR material. Yeah,
right. But technically, I don't think it is. And just
it's not. It's definitely totally not. This is jokes, all parody and satire.
Yeah. Right. and so so that's a worry for sure. That is one of many things that are making it hard for me to sleep right now. And we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And the worst thing is, right, at some point I'm going to have to put my computers on the ship and ship them. And that means, and it's going to take like 2 months for them to get, to the other end. And maybe I can FedEx a whole computer, a whole big desk. I mean, I don't know if you've seen my setup, right?
Yeah, your monitors are crazy. They're going to need a shipping container of their own.
Right, exactly. And so it can't exactly take all this on carry-on. And so what does that mean? How is Jonathan's Space Report going to operate for those 2 months, right? I need the big monitors to do the job. And so I'm sort of stressing about, well, I may just have to shut down for 2 months and spend several months catching up with all the launches. So, it's like no one's allowed to launch anything in October or November because Jonathan's in transit.
Like waiting for the next Falcon 9 upper stage failure. Like, right now. Now's the moment. Ship it,
Yeah.
I got at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of stuff. I when I came to Mexico, I brought this monitor with me here, and it's a 38-inch ultra wide, and that the one big monitor, it was like a significant proportion of my effort to move went into that monitor. So right. Yeah, I don't think you could bring, I'd like get a special box for it and pack it up all nice and bring it on the airplane. And
now I'm the fucking weirdo with the Apple Vision Pro where I'm like, this is my monitor, because guess what? I just put it in a backpack and it's my whole monitor.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
you can do it. You can do a huge wraparound display now, Jonathan. It's pretty epic. And then other windows around it.
Maybe that's the route. I'll have to see. I think I'm too old to learn how to use that stuff. But
I'm too old to learn how to use that stuff. So.
So I don't know. It's moving is a challenge, and unpacking is going to be real fun. Though I'm looking forward to that. So. Once I actually have a specific place that I've actually, signed money for and things like that, I think my stress level will go down because then at least the plan will be specific. Yeah. Whereas now the plan is just get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Are you like 1,000%? I'm crowdfunding this whole thing, like, individuals doing this, or are you also thinking like I should, hit the industry up to see if there's wants to be some like gold level sponsors of this project?
Well, there have been a couple contributors to the GoFundMe that have been, at the $10,000 level that are, either very rich or associated with industry. And I think so I want to call out again ComSpock, who are, who have a mission that's very aligned with the mission of the Jonathan Space Report. And so I feel comfortable with taking their money. But so first I just say I'm putting like my entire wealth into this as well, right? So I've just sold my condo. I've transferred the money to the UK. That's sitting in the bank account waiting to buy the new house. And so the GoFundMe is the on top of that to make, because that money won't cover in the English real estate market, a place big enough to hold the library. And so so I think, between my own money and the GoFundMe, it should be enough. And I'd rather not take on a huge amount of corporate sponsorship, because I do want to keep the independence of this. I think that's an important part of my brand, is that, I'm not beholden to people. And so I can, even the people that I love, I can call them out when I think they're doing space littering or something that they shouldn't be doing, and so I want to be able to still do that. Because if I can't do that, then the whole point of keeping the library alive is sort of lost a bit. And so but we'll see how desperate I get.
Well, no, we talked about this when we stopped recording Miko last time we talked. I mentioned this not recorded, so I'm going to do it in a recorded manner as to bully you into doing this. But I thought, I've had friends that have done similar projects, like building a new studio, new headquarters, something, and they would sell bricks to people, right? That you could buy either a regular size brick or bigger bricks, and then your name gets engraved on that and it becomes an element of the new place, whether that's in a wall or a feature wall or a nice floor or something. And I feel like people would dig that, of like, I've got contributed more money and I've got a physical thing that's part of the library. So you should do the brick thing. That's my point.
I will maybe a bookcase then. Maybe a particular bookcase would
love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. How do Jake and I get on the restricted section one? We want the ITAR one.
Yeah. We'll work on that. Because I have these beautiful. I want to give another shout out to my friend Barry up the street. Barry builds my bookcases. They're pine bookcases, stained dark mahogany. They're custom built, to be the right size to hold all my binders and things like that. And over the past 30 years that I've been buying from him, he's done a really nice job. And so I'm taking his bookcases with me, and so they'll be a part of the new library.
Love it.
What is your method for determining when you should add a book to the collection? Is this purely looking at historical stuff that is contributing to the existence of the list, or like when new books come out, you're like, I'll buy a copy and throw it in the library?
I mean, it varies. Yeah, mostly the latter. Mostly it's like, I just see I hear about something, and sometimes I'm diving on one of the sites like ABE Books, trying to find a book on a particular topic that's out of print and ancient. But also, if I see something that comes out that's relevant, in a very broad sense of relevant, I'll get it. And that's historical, but includes things that are going to be historical 10 years from now, right? So I guess my preference is for things that have data and numbers in them, rather than, I don't do so much of the sociological stuff, even though it's interesting, right? Because it's just not my specialty. But there's that. But still, sometimes I will, because there's the stuff that is like that I use for what I do. And then there's the stuff that's just interesting to read as background, and so I'm not above doing that. But I don't feel like those are must-haves for me. Whereas I think if someone comes out with a data book on, the Naval Research Laboratory satellite program of the 1970s, then I'm going to go, okay, that one I have to have, right?
Yeah. There's such an interesting crossover between those two things, right? And this is like not a problem specific to what you're doing. This is a general human problem, right? Numbers versus kind of feelings. This is like where we're going with that, but
numbers versus feelings.
There's always like such an interesting crossover with that, because you can have things that are like, you can have the pure data And sometimes that psychological part of it adds important context, right? You know, like one thing that I would think about like, you know, the Mars missions that crashed because the units mixed up, right? You know, so you can get the data, you can get the numbers that this is how much fuel they thought they needed and how much they put in, but like the story behind why those numbers were the way they are is like is the name of the game, right?
Oh, absolutely, and it's important for me to know all that stuff, right? And there, and to add that context where I can, I'd say it's. But I think what I feel is like there are other people who can talk about that better than I can, right? And they need some of the technical data in order to write the book that talks about that. And where are they going to find that technical data? They're going to get it from me. Right? And so in a way, I see my role there as being the source for the people who are better than me at finding the softer stuff. And that's what that's what I'm best at contributing. And I'll try and write some of the broader stuff as well. And I certainly have written, you know, polemics about that kind of stuff in the past, but it's not. I think it's not what I'm best at, and so I think you have to know your limitations, right?
Yeah. Is there any? Do you have any plans to like digitize any of this in any way? Like I know there's some things you can't. You can't just take a book and publish it, but.
Right. Well, that's right, and it's. I mean, even digitizing things. Even today, I mean, now scanning something, the digital product you get is so much closer to the original than it was even 10 years ago, I would say. I mean, 10 years ago, there's so much scanned stuff now on the web where like, but the photographs are horrible.
Yeah.
Out, right? And I see that a lot of the old, like, some of the declassified spy satellite stuff, right? They have these histories. And you can't make anything out in the photographs they scan.
Yeah.
If only they kept the original books, they could have done a proper scan today and left it. So I am of the opinion that
I just usually wait for the president to tweet the pictures from this classified
there's that. Yes, that's another approach.
That's what I usually do.
But I'm saying that I do think there's value to the artifacts.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with stuff, even if I have it digitized, I'll often go and get the actual books from the shelf and open that because there's something in the interface that works better for me. But nevertheless, yes, the long-term plan is to digitize as much of the library as possible, and make whatever I can available digitally. That's a 10-year project, not a 1-year project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's once you get there
And so once I'm unpacked, that will be the next step is to work on digitizing that.
Yeah.
And to work on completing version 2 of the General Catalog of Space Objects, which has a whole bunch of stuff in it that I have all of this stuff that I want to get out, that I think people are going to really love. And it just isn't quite there yet. I need a year or two to pull it together. And so all of these projects, they're obvious things to do, are backed up right now, waiting for the move.
Right. Yeah. I was even thinking like you don't even necessarily need to like digitize the actual content, but like even like digitizing sort of like an index of the library, like these are all the volumes we have, and like here's how many pages they are, and the author and the year, and like here, you could even index the indices, like here's all the topics inside that book. And
a lot of it is, a lot of the most valuable stuff is not like books so much, but like I have the binders of each launch vehicle. And in the binder I have per launch, here are all the documents from many different sources that are about that launch. Right. And so there, I think
you've got your own meta books.
yeah, they're already meta books. So
we can go deeper. We can index the indices of the indices.
The Jonathan LLM is gonna slap. That thing's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So
McDowell.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Oh,
that's
God.
A very brandable thing. McDowell.
It's going to be a mixture of incredibly tedious numbers and snarkiness.
Yeah, exactly.
What LLMs are the best at.
So yeah, geez, I mean, so there's so much to do that I want to do to get out to the public and preserve this information for the longer term. And one of the important things, I think, also on the 10-year time scale, the question is, how does this go forward when I'm not around anymore? Which hopefully is several decades down the road, but it's time to start thinking about it. And so I do want to start building a cadre of an open source community that would be sort of the editorial and governance body of going forward with the general catalog of space objects, without me, and sort of start distributing tasks. I think I need to get my software in a better state before I do that, so that I can open source it and share it out. And so that's again another 5-year project probably there. But in the long term, that's the vision: is to take what I've done, which people seem to find useful, and make it available in that broad context, and make it sustainable. And it's not. I can't be. I do think that there probably isn't anyone with the right mix of skills and insanity to replace me wholesale. And so I think it's going to have to be a consortium.
Yeah.
Well, you are talking to 2 software developers, so
You know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying we're also probably on your short list to ask for help.
Super game.
When you do get to the point where you want to robustify the digital part of this.
Yeah.
I think
I was going to ask about that especially in relation to the McDowell line, right? How much of this cataloging historically, do you think you would have written that paper? It's 2018, I think it was, right? When that was published?
2018 paper, but I started thinking about it in 1994.
But that's what I'm saying. Would you have done that if you weren't gathering all this intel all along? Did that database...
The reason I did that was that when I was making my database, I was making lists of things in space. And therefore, I needed to decide what is in the list and what is not in the list. And so that immediately takes you to, how do you define space? And so that whole thing about the McDowell line was for those who don't know, is I made this argument that the right place to put the boundary of space is at 80 kilometers and not at 100 kilometers like some people do. And that was a decision I came to when making the catalog and what goes in the list of things in space. And really this is just my weird, demented mind, ask these questions, right? And one question I always ask is, okay, here's a definition. What happens if you push the definition one way or the other a little bit? Do you get in a few extra interesting things, or do you get in, 100,000 pieces of dreck that you clearly don't want, right? And so it became clear to me that, for example, just on if we take the specific case of astronauts, if you move the boundary from 100 to 80, what you don't get 500 extra astronauts. You get, at least not until recently, you get in 1990 you got 13 extra astronauts who are
you get the
X-15 pilots and a couple other cases, right? And it's oh
no, we lost Jonathan. That's the whole thing. Don't worry about it. I'm fixing it. We're fixing it.
Yeah, and so it's well, those are really interesting, and I want to know about them. And so by picking that lower boundary, you don't add a lot of noise, you add a lot of interest.
I love this.
Right? And so that is not why I've settled on 80. I settled on 80 because of the other arguments, but I was but that's why I asked the question, right? Mm-hmm. And so in all of the, is this, what, for every column in the database, right? You can ask that question almost of what are the boundaries, and what happens if you tweak the boundaries a little? Mm-hmm. Is that an interesting thing to do or not? and that comes from my training as an undergraduate mathematician, right? When it's all about definitions, and where it's fine to have different definitions as long as you say what your axiom set is.
Yeah.
And
I
so
love that definition. So it makes me think of the planet debate, right? What is a planet? And that kind of happens as well, where like if you can try to come at it from like a top down kind of thing, where it's like, well, if we define it by shape or composition or all these kind of things, whatever, you can move the line in different ways depending on how you want to carve that up. But if you actually just kind of like step back and put them all on like a spectrum, all the different natural bodies in space, they kind of naturally group into these areas just because of the way physics work, right? So like you have some sort of differentiation.
There's a whole area of math called clustering analysis.
Yes,
How you find essentially islands in multi-parameter, multi-dimensional spaces. And that's sort of like a semi-objective way of trying to do this. And we do this a lot in astronomy. For example, how do you decide what is and isn't in a particular cluster of galaxies, things like that, right? So that kind of way of thinking is absolutely, I think, a very, very productive and so some people
practical, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You need to make these cuts. And I think, again, the mathematician's way of doing it is saying you make a cut. It doesn't have to be the same cut everyone else makes, as long as you define what cut you're making. And describe that. So as long as it's, and then the question you ask is this a useful cut? Is this a cut that gives you insight that you didn't have when you did it the other way?
Yeah, it's the same thing with the planets. It's like you can decide that you have to clear your orbit, and so Pluto's not included, or you can decide that you don't, and so Pluto is included. But like at the end of the day, if you're studying planets, Pluto is interesting, and you want to include it in your data set. And so like take the science part out of it, and just say the practicality.
Well, yes and no, right? But the other thing is, you also don't want to gerrymander. So my argument is, if you include Pluto, you also have to include 200 other trans-Neptunian objects.
Absolutely.
And we can't make the kids learn a list of 200 objects. Right?
That is a baloney argument. I hate the kids memorizing. I don't like that one. I will fight that one.
Okay. Because so I feel like I'm fine with having a category of major planets that's just the 8. And then I think for me, the interesting thing is a category of worlds. And for me, worlds are using the self-gravitating round criterion, right? Mm-hmm. That includes Pluto and Eris and even Haumea, and also Titan and Ganymede and other things that are like moons. And so
as long as Titan's in there, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good with that. Titan's the goat. Hello. Oh yeah, look at this. We got an intern calling.
Hello?
I think it's intern day. Should I turn it down?
Day,
it's either a prank call or it's an intern.
I think it was
spam call.
Right.
Yeah.
Titan. You were singing the praises of Titan, which is
exactly.
Up my alley.
That going with picking that definition, suddenly you have these really interesting places like Titan and Ganymede and Europa and so on as first-class objects and not as second-class things, right? And whereas if you do the planet-moon thing, right, then you're saying Titan is the same kind of thing as Deimos. And I'm sorry, Deimos is just a
right. That Deimos.
And
not a planet,
these 200 extra moons of Saturn that just got cataloged last week, and if you hadn't heard about that, maybe
I did,
yeah. And so they're not the same thing. They're not interesting in the same way, and so you kind of pick the definitions that are both interesting and practical. And so I think the world one is an interesting one, and the major planet one is a practical one for the kids, and then we can, as professionals, we can use the world's one, because I care much more about what the object is than about whether it's orbiting one thing or another, right? And so that distinction between planet and moon is a very old way of thinking that goes back to all we knew about them as how they were moving, and not how big they are, what they were made of, and so on. And so that's why we need to revisit these definitions and have the arguments, because there are scientists who like poo-poo all this semantic stuff and go, we don't care about these definitions, but actually it affects what questions you ask, and when you do statistical studies, it affects what's in your sample and what isn't in your sample.
Yeah,
and so it is important.
Yeah, taxonomy is a real thing. Yeah,
exactly.
I just want to jump on the kids memorizing thing is a bad argument. So I just want to put this out into the world, because I was thinking about this like literally this morning. It doesn't matter if the kids can't remember all the planets, because you know what else they don't memorize? All the cities and states and countries and lakes and rivers and mountains and mountain ranges and galaxies and universes and stars. They don't memorize all that either. So like,
there's also more Star Wars planets than our planets, and I remember those fine.
Well,
and I think my son does too.
Maybe they don't memorize it in the US. I mean, I certainly I learned geography in school in England, and I memorized all the capitals of all the countries that were around at that time.
Yeah, but you're a professional astronomer, and I bet you can't name all the stars either.
Not all of the stars. No. I can name all of the ones in the HD catalog, right? There's HD1, HD2, HD3.
I like too that your internet handle is hooked to a planet being named after you that you would exclude from this planet list.
My planet, I'm really minor planet 4589.
Yeah.
Minor, you know, and that's how it goes. But
I enjoy that.
I was say major planet, you know, major planet. Yeah, 4589 is not a major planet, no question. It's only about a mile across, but it's close to my heart.
That's really good. Yeah,
too good.
Love it. Okay.
Are you the one? I have a McDowell question to round us out. A McDowell line question of this many years on. Are you like, where are you at with number one, calling it the McDowell line? I feel like you were like, I kind of dig it in the early days. I don't know if that's touch and go. Did you expect anyone else to like? Because I don't know. Has there been like major classification flips? I mean that. Internationally, the FAU right is still doing their thing, but
right, exactly. Now, I mean, I think there hasn't been, I mean, you know, which I wasn't expecting really, but I would say it reopened the debate, and so people now, I think, when the topic comes up, instead of going, oh, of course it's 100, they go, well, maybe it's 100, maybe some people think it's 80. You know, and so I think that the debate is going to carry on for, you know, decades to come probably, and you know, what I haven't seen is anyone come back with a, you know, and here's why 100 is really a better choice, right? And so I feel pretty happy that, you know, I've drawn my line in the sand, and like I was saying, you can use different definitions, right, as long as you say what you're using. So I've now explained to the world why my website uses 80, why my lists of astronauts use 80, right? I've got my justification.
That's because you're paid off by the U.S. Air Force and Virgin Galactic specifically, right?
They're gold sponsors with a brick in the library.
Yeah. You walk in, it's like the Space Force wings and a picture of Richard Branson. Yeah.
No, actually, you know, no, not actually. And if you look at the GoFundMe, neither of those have any money.
Pay up, boys! Come on,
Richard, if you're listening, you owe me big.
Huge.
And just to say what I want to make clear is, I mean, for the Virgin Galactic thing, right? I was arguing for 80 back in 1994 before Virgin Galactic was even a thing, right? So,
when they were still aiming for 100, you were arguing for 80.
Right, exactly. And so but yeah, how do we go into this?
Yeah,
it's the McDowell line.
The McDowell line. I'm happy with it, and not everyone agrees.
Buddy.
Not everyone agrees, but at least they know where I stand and why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? And if you find that a different definition is better for what you're doing, good on you. But if you come as, and then ask, oh, please give me a list of people in space, and I want you to use 100, I'm going, no, you make your own list if you want to use 100. I'm going to give you the list. If you want some data from me, I'm going to give you the list that uses 80.
There we go.
All right. I love that. I'm a full-on convert, so no arguments here.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we got this fundraiser is rounding out. Like, what is the timeline for the fundraiser? Is there a URL you can? We'll post a link, obviously, but you say.
Yeah, well, if you just go to GoFundMe and look for Jonathan's Space Report, that you'll easily find it. I'm going to keep it going for probably another couple of months and then wrap it up. I think that, but really it's in the next month or so, I think that I will actually start to, be spending this money big time. And so unless the two places I'm looking at, neither of them pans out, and then I'm still back to square one with looking for properties. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the next couple of months are going to be the key moment in finding the property, finding a new home for the library, arguing with planning councils, and then I will I'm not sharing a lot about those details of the specific properties at the moment because I don't think that's smart given that I don't actually own them yet. Mm-hmm. But once I actually own something, then I will give out a lot more details, and we'll have pictures and like, here's the crappy place that it is now, and here's the plan for what it's going to be.
Love it. Yeah, I want to see the time lapse renovation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when it's all done, Anthony and I will come by and we'll do a live Off-Nominal in the library. It'll be awesome.
Oh shit, yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And this is why, so there's another property that I was sort of looking at online that's like absolutely fabulous and would be perfect. It's a beautiful building and huge, and it's all the space I need, and it's like 3 hours from anywhere. and I'm like, no, so I'm trying to find a place near London that's like commutable within an hour of London, so that when you'll fly into Heathrow, you can get there and come and do your Off-Nominal without having to take extreme measures.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about me. I'm from Western Canada, where a 4-hour drive is what you do for lunch. So, we'll.
Yeah, no, I'm the East Coast nitwit.
Yeah,
it's probably 20 minutes, or I'll fly.
Yeah. Right, exactly. 70 minutes to New York.
I'm a city kid. I grew up in the London area. I've lived in Boston. I'm used to public transport.
Wait, can I walk? No, then I must take an airplane. I have to buy a plane flight, I guess.
Exactly. Those are the two choices: walking distance and airplane. That's exactly.
Oh shit! No, this is great, Jonathan. You're the best. Oh, I just knocked my chair down. Now I'm shorter than I usually am, Jake.
Oh dear.
Close this out. You do the outro. I always do the outro. You do it, Jake. Come on.
I know this is great. As like you said, this is such a cool project. Your data is so. It's just great. It's just so useful in all these different kind of ways, and I know that the rest of the community thinks so too. We always refer to you're like the ultimate source for us. We're like, well, what about this? What about this? Well, let's just go find out what Jonathan McDowell says in his numbers, and then we'll use that. So I hope that all of the listeners are going to help you out and get this library a good spot because it deserves one. So,
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to beg on air.
Yeah,
do the brick thing.
You do the brick thing.
Yeah,
sell the bookshelves. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on. And anomalies out there. Come on, get some bookshelves in your life. Come on. Pay up, peeps. Come on, get Jonathan out of the basement. Get him a window, for Christ's sake.
So next week we have a pre-recorded show. We have a waste from Pixel coming on. Pixel is a hyperspectral imaging satellite company, and they're doing some really cool stuff. And so look forward
Jake's
to that.
trying to figure out what the next dimension of imagery is. He doesn't understand this whole spectrum thing.
No. The different spectrums and imagery, it melts my brain, and I struggle with it. So I always have to get other people.
Have me back on, and I'll explain it all.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Good, because I don't know if Jake's gonna go deep enough when we're talking about like satellite business models and shit too. So we're gonna have like a whole episode with charts, I think.
Yeah. What is a wavelength? That's where we'll start. Yeah.
How does light even work anyway?
No, those are good and surprisingly deep questions. Yeah.
One episode on wavelength, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right.
All right, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.